So what I want to do is I want to just kind of go through all of this stuff with you guys, really go through. Jennifer and I want to be able to answer some questions also. Y'all know, I mean, all of this is evolving. Obviously, Jennifer's very active at the local and the state level with the MLS regulations as far as making sure that we're going to have all that. We're going to do some Q&A meetings in the coming weeks. Also, we'll do some role playing where we'll talk about if this question's asked, how will you answer it? So we're going to do some of those things to make sure we're prepared. We're just going to continue to get y'all the best information possible. This is some stuff that really, what I want to do today is just kind of go through and get you an update on where we are now, basically a little less than 90 days out from the current date of when these will be enacted. And some of the things that we're going to do is more framing this stuff in a way and hopefully it gets you an idea of some of the creativity. We will continue to refine this as we get closer, but we just want to answer some of the common questions we're getting right now and how to think about those things as we go through them. I mentioned it to some of y'all that were in here earlier. If you've got specific questions that you're not sure how to answer or you want to have answered, let me know, because on Friday I will be out in Dallas interviewing Tom Ferry for an Inman article on that specific thing. We're going to talk about 5 specific questions and how to answer them that maybe that agents are getting from consumers. So I'll be doing that on Friday. So if y'all have got specific ones, let me know on that. So what I want to do today is just kind of go through this, and we'll just go ahead and we can go through this. Y'all have heard me say it again and again. It's separation season. This is the time when professionals are going to separate themselves from the average agents, from the agents that maybe are not going to adapt as fast. So this is the time where we do have a real chance to do some of this. And literally when we're looking at this, my friend David Childers had kind of talked about growing up as a race car fan. His dad was a race car fan. One of the things he said on that is he said that his dad told him when he got out of college and he was going into business, hey, everybody's a great driver on the straightaway. So if you think back to the last few years when we were in the pandemic, we had this straightaway where literally the only thing you had to do was just keep your foot to the floor, and everybody was going as fast as they could, and there was nobody making any real progress on each other because everybody's doing the same thing. We're just going wide open. But what his dad told him is that actually though, when we come into the time where we come into the turn, that's where we have the opportunity. So what do? You downshift during the turn. That's what we're doing now. We're figuring out exactly what this looks like. We're identifying the pattern or the direction we want to go into this turn. And as we go into this turn, what is it that we're going to do, and what is the line, so to speak, that we're going to take? Because here's what happens is the majority of the car crashes or the difficult times come for people in the turn is when people panic. And either they come in it too fast and they run into the wall, or they come into it and they don't realize what to do, and so they panic and they hit the brakes and somebody runs into them. So what we want to do is we want to set ourselves a path, because it's not a matter of if, it's when do we get to that next straightaway. And when you're looking at this, and the turns are the time when their separation occurs, and when you come out of this, it's not a matter of if, it's when does this market take back off and start going again. When we get back into the next straightaway, we want to be so far ahead of everybody that they can't even catch us. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go through and really look at some of these, answer some of these questions that maybe we're getting. This again, I want you to think about this. As we get going, it will refine down, but these are just some of the basics. So I'm going to go into basically 3 different things here. I want to go into my 3 observations of effective communication. These are the things that I've found that no matter what the question is if you can keep this pattern in mind, we're going to be able to formulate a way to communicate in a way that builds bridges instead of burns them. So first one is this: confrontation kills the communication. So the biggest thing I think is to come into this understanding that there are going to be some tough questions, but what we need to do is to prepare ourselves to build those bridges. So it's not that we need to discount or say this is crazy what's going on or whatever it is. Find the things that we can do to add some value in those things. So if we go to this next slide, Katie, if you don't mind. My mom raised me to be the thermostat. Y'all know what I'm talking about? That no matter what happens, if people get heated, I'm supposed to stay calm. If things get a little bit colder, then I need to stay calm. I need to be that thermostat, so to speak, so that when a lot of times what can happen is when people ask very pointed questions, sometimes they do it just to, I don't know, maybe it's just me, they just try to get under my skin. But when they ask those questions is to stay calm. So I'm going to give you kind of what that looks like. Because it's not a matter of if those questions are going to come. It's just a matter of how are we going to handle those questions. So I want to prepare as we go into some of this as well. Y'all have all seen the Maya Angelou quote, people will forget what you said, they'll forget what you do, but they'll never forget how you make them feel. So as we go into this, be thinking from a standpoint of answering this question in a way that they're going to remember how it is that you actually answer those things. So here's the phrasing that I really like, okay? Because a lot of times what will happen is people will ask us a question, and I'll think, oh, well, I've got a give them all this information. But in reality, they're not even asking the question in a way, and until we know what that question is. So what I like to do to build that bridge, stay that thermostat is, that's a great question. I'm really glad you asked that, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. What have you heard? And let them tell you what they've heard. A lot of times they may even clear their own question up if you let them. But find out what it is and what the true question is. And once they've done that, then we can begin to give them some facts, and we can begin to give them the answers we're looking for. So first thing is that we're looking at is that obviously confrontation kills the communication. Second thing is stats tell but stories sell. So we need to be thinking from a standpoint of how are we going to tell the stories, or how are we going to do this in a way that is continuing to build some of these bridges. So I'll go to this next one. So the buyer says, and I'm just using some theoreticals here. Obviously these things will change over time. You know, I'm not going to use an agent so I can save the commission. I've had a couple people call me with that and say, hey, listen, I had some of our folks say, hey, I'm just going to go directly to the listing agent so that I can save the commission. Now, again, the next thing we're going to do when we get this is a lot of times what we would do is we would go straight to stats. Okay, I'm going to use the for sale by owner thing that I was taught when it was just like, give them the information, you know. So when if we're thinking about this, it's very similar if you can play that pattern. The for sale by owner, we used to say 7% of homes are sold 2023 by for sale by owner. So you absolutely have the right to do that. But the typical FSBO home sold for $310,000 compared to $405,000 for agent-assisted homes. Do you see where it would make sense for you to do that? It doesn't make sense to them. We're giving them stats. It doesn't give them the ability to do that. So how can we frame this more in a way that basically gives them a story to tell? So if we're looking at that from that standpoint, here's some of the things that I would do. I had somebody tell me this. My buddy Andrew Annam said that they had this question asked also. I asked him how they were answering it. And he said, what we're doing is we're saying, hey, have you ever been through a divorce? And if they say yes, he says, great. I'm sorry you had to go through that, but let me just take you back there. If your spouse had had an extremely good attorney and you had gone in without representation, do you think it would have worked out better for you or worse for you? Now, see, this is the way we can start telling these stories. Now, I'm just using that as an example, okay? If they have not had a divorce, good Lord forbid you actually had to go through a divorce and you were sitting in that room and they had a powerful attorney that is going to negotiate on their behalf and you didn't, do you think it would work out better for you and it would have been cheaper in the long run for you to have hired an attorney or for you to just have represented yourself? You see, we're beginning to think about some ways that we can start to do these things. Again, I'm using this as an example. I want you guys to be thinking about, and as we go through this, I promise you Jennifer and I are going to be sharing some of the stories of the answers and the questions that are coming and how we can tell these stories, okay? So let's go on to the next one. Seller says, I don't have to, so I heard I don't have to pay the buyer's agent commission now. You know, this is something that we've had a few people come up with recently. Again, let me just kind of go through the pattern of this, okay? And there's a couple of different ways we can do this. Number one is, great question. There's a lot of misinformation out there. I'd love to know, what is it that you've heard? Give them an opportunity to tell us what it is they've heard before we start answering the question, okay? Next thing is, state the facts. I mean, listen, if they say, well, I just heard that I'm not going to have to do this anymore and I'm going to save that other side of the commission, whatever that is, 2.5%, 3%, whatever it is. And then it's the opportunity for us to state the facts. Well, let me actually just tell you what was proposed at this point and that we are expecting to be passed is that it's not that you don't have to or can't pay that commission. What is actually the case now is it cannot be listed in the MLS. So that's the fact of where we are. If they're asking about the buyer agency side, just simply say, now let me give you the fact. The facts are now that in order to see a home that's listed in the MLS, you have to have a buyer's agency agreement signed. Okay, those are the facts, okay? So once we give them the facts, this is the line that I really like. My job is to provide you with the best information possible so that you can make the best decision for you and your family. And then we're going to go into and share a story. And I'm going to give you a couple examples of this also. So if we go to the next slide, it's going to tell us a couple of these different options. So when you buy, now this is a powerful thing. You have to let the sellers position themselves or to be thinking from a standpoint of when they buy. So think of it this way. If I'm sitting with that seller, I'm just going to simply say, listen, as always, commission has always been negotiable. You absolutely have the right to not pay the buyer side commission. You also have the right to go for sale by owner where you would have no commission paid. That has always been available to you. But let me just ask you this, because when you're selling, odds are you're going to go buy. So let's think of it from this perspective. When you get ready to go buy, and let's just be practical here, if there are 5 houses like the one that you're interested in, the neighborhood you're interested in, and I'm representing you as a buyer's agent, which you have to have somebody based on the law to be able to see houses in MLS. If I'm your agent and I give you the 5 properties that are out there, 4 of them offer to pay your buyer side commission, and 1 says, I'm not paying that, you will be responsible for that. As the buyer, will you be as interested in that house, or will you be trying to negotiate that in on the backside and lower that price? You see, you have to put themselves in that place. So then once we've done that, we can just put them in that position where we're giving that opportunity. Next is that I'm going to go through the through the second part there, which is that would put us at a competitive disadvantage. So let's think about this. If you relist your home and we are the only ones, and let's say there's 5 or 6 homes like yours in the neighborhood, and there are only 5 or 6. We just talked about if you were on the buyer side, and the agent presents that to their potential buyers and says, hey, there's 5 homes that are available here. Here's all 5 of them. And full disclosure, which is what we love about this, it's going to give them full disclosure. 4 of them are going to offer us a commission because, listen, we're going to check on that before we show properties, right? I mean, we're all going to do that. However that looks, it's not going to be on the MLS, but we're going to have that communication prior to. Would you, in this situation, think that we're going to put ourselves in a better position by being the 1 or 2 that don't offer the commission? Or will we be in a better position if we offer that and we negotiate it on the other side? Again, my job is to give you the best information possible so that you can make the best decision for you and your family. What would you like to do? Also, if we can go back, Katie, to that with the cast the widest net. This is a line that I really love. Hey, you absolutely have the opportunity not to offer compensation on the buyer's side. My job, again, is to give you the best information possible so that you can put yourself in a position to help your family in the best way possible. My job also is to get you the highest price possible, net out for the sale of your home, and to cast the widest net possible so that we can get as many people through the door that have the opportunity to fall in love with this house. With that in mind, what would you like to do? Put that back in there, let them know. They have choices here. It's not like we're backing them into that. And then ultimately, you're going to have the decision to make on whatever it is and the type of business that you want to run and who you want to work with. But this gives us the ability to really do these things in a way where we're answering some questions, but we're giving them the opportunity to do these things. Does that all make sense? All right, let's keep moving. Number 3 is how we communicate makes a huge difference in what is heard. And as we go through this on the next slide, Katie, I don't know if y'all have ever heard this, the 7-38-55 rule of communication. This is something that Gina Blafari has just been constantly talking to me about. And basically what it is that you have to understand that 7% of communication is words. So it's the actual words. So if I'm texting someone or I'm emailing someone and all they see is the words, how many of us know, that can come across very differently. You know what I mean? Jennifer, when she texts me, I know her heart, I know what she's saying, but it can come across very sharp sometimes, if that makes sense. But from that standpoint, when we're communicating with just our words, text or email, we're only giving about 7% of the value of the communication. The next part is 38% is tonality. So the speed with which we speak, the things that we say, how we say them, whether we say them with confidence or we end with a question. It's all that is tonality. But if we have a phone call at least, if we just have a phone call, we're going to have 45% of total communication that we're actually doing this. This is why I want to encourage you to make sure when you're doing these, whether it be on Zoom or whether it be in person ideally, that you're meeting with people and you're going over these things in person. Because then 55% of communication is body language. And listen, a lot of times you'll say that and it may be what we think of ourselves. But in reality, if I'm sitting across from Joey and I say something and Joey goes, that's completely, I can't see that on the phone, but I'm going to adapt what I'm saying based on his body language, not just mine. So if he comes in and he leans into what I'm saying, I know that he's listening and he's actually believing what I'm saying. So having that ability to have those communication in person is going to make a huge difference. So just as we have always tried to do our listing presentations in person, I'm going to say going forward, we're going to want to have our buyer presentations absolutely in person. If these are out-of-town owners, which we deal with a lot, we want to do this on Zoom. We want to see their reaction to all of this information as we go through. We're going to give you all specific stuff on that buyer side and on that presentation coming in the coming weeks, but I just want you to start thinking about the way that you're going to set these things up. So with the settlement, this is another question that we get, okay? And this is going back into the positioning and how we're going to answer some things. With the settlement, all the changes coming to real estate, are you worried about your business? I got this. Hey, what's going to happen to real estate? I heard some of these things. Again, the biggest thing we can do is be that thermostat. Don't get fired up about, what we feel might be right or wrong. Just come in and say, I'm so glad you asked that question, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. What is it that you've heard? And once we do that, then we have the ability to come in. And let me tell you what I love about this, because I think when we come from a place where we're not fighting something, but we're actually talking about things we love, all of a sudden, those people that were just trying to tweak us a little bit, we've disarmed them. But also, it shows the type of person we are. So here's the thing that I've been doing as people have asked me that. Let me tell you what I love about this settlement. First thing I love is I love the transparency. I love the fact that we're going to have the opportunity to make sure that everybody is absolutely communicated to in a powerful way. This is something I've always done in my business. I've always made sure that there was a net settlement sheet for any of my sellers. I've always made sure that the buyer understood the closing costs they were going to have. This is something that is going to give us the ability, really, for the second thing that I love, for professional agents to separate themselves from the amateurs. Far too long, we've had a business where you could just fake it until you made it in real estate. That is no longer going to be the case. With this transparency, with this ability to help these consumers understand what their expenses are going to be and how it's going to be done, is going to give professional agents like myself the ability to really separate myself, because the value I bring will absolutely have to be communicated. There's nowhere that amateur agents can hide anymore. They have to either become professionals or they're going to be run out of the business. Again, you see where I'm talking about this. And the last thing is this: speak passionately. And I'm not talking about getting loud. I'm talking about let them know how excited you are, because this is the way I always end this. So you ask me, am I worried about our business? Let me tell you this: I'm more excited for professional agents in real estate and the way that consumers, whether they be buyers or sellers, are going to be represented than I've ever been. So if you're asking me if I'm worried about our business, no, I'm more excited than I've ever been, because I know that people are always going to want to buy, people are always going to sell, and now we're going to have the opportunity for true pros to step up and gain market share like never before. Does this all make sense? We're basically coming from a place where we're framing our conversations from a place of what we're excited about, not what we're defending. We're coming from a place where we're giving facts and not just trying to answer questions that we don't even know what the questions are. So as we go through this a little bit, again, it is separation season, y'all. This is the time when we're going to really be able to separate ourselves. So what is it that you're going to do? And then last but not least, this year is going to pass one way or the other. Is it going to be a year of possibility, or is it going to be a year that we actually get some production done? And I'm going to share this story with you in closing. Back around early 1900s, there was a guy that owned a farm out in West Texas. And that farmer actually was going through some bad times. There was this drought. He couldn't grow anything. He was struggling to pay the bills, even put food on the table. So he ended up starting to have to sell off some of this family farm that had been in his family for generations. And it was the worst thing he could think of. But then one day he had this person come by and said, hey, I'm with this oil company. And what I'd love to do is to see, we believe you may have oil on this. This is around 1901. And if we find some, you'll get a royalty, you'll get a little bit of every piece of this. And the guy says, well, absolutely, Phil, please go look. And the first drill they dropped in, within just a few days, they hit a geyser like had never been seen before. 100,000 gallons before they could cap that thing. That was the introduction to Spindletop, which was the largest oil refinery or oil field in all of North America, still is to this day. 3 different oil companies were brought out of that. Now, the question then becomes, was the farmer a millionaire before they found the oil and he just owned the land? Or was it after they found the oil? See, here's the thing is what I found is there's a lot of people that have a ton of potential just underneath, but it's never brought to the surface. I think this is a perfect opportunity for us to understand that if we're going to have a year of productivity instead of just potential, this is the time for us to bring this stuff to the surface, bring it to the marketplace, because when that happens, everything else changes. So as we go through this, y'all hear me say it all the time. I mean, listen, as we're going through this, somebody's going to have the best year ever. Why not us? Why not us? If you'll prepare, if you'll lean into these things, this is why we're having this. Jennifer and I are going to be on the road. We're going to be answering questions. We're available all the time. If you have these questions, we'll promise we will put you in the best position possible for you to be able to answer these questions in a way that helps your clients, and so that you can serve them at a higher level and get even more business. Thanks for watching the video. I specifically chose the video below for you because it builds on the one you just watched. I hope it's helpful, and I'll talk to you soon.